Because
I
we'll
mean,
have it sorted after this, because you're not streaming
my
anyway.
idea was having it at 12, but it'd probably just roll over to 1 before anything progressed.
Alright, so we can dive into it. Just let us know when you're good. Probably half an hour ago.
Oh, yeah, I was prepared to stream, like, as soon as I got my face mask on.
Okay. So, let's just go for anybody. Well, first, welcome. Yeah. Welcome to Revolutionary Lumpen Radio. We're kicking it off on season 3. You're the first comrade to come on, so this makes it episode 1. What we're planning on doing with this series is going around visiting all of our comrades, content creators, educators, agitators. Would like to speak to some organisations in the UK because this platform and others, so much of communist thought discourse comes out of the United States, and I'd really like to broadcast what some of the great work that people are doing in the UK. I think there's so much that people can learn from the organisations on the ground in the UK. You're a part of one of those organisations. I'd like to hear a little bit about that, but first and foremost, just who are we speaking to? What can you tell us about yourself and how you got into politics?
I go by the Engelsist on YouTube. I try not to give out my name, even though if you pay close attention, you can find out my first name at least. I'm from around Manchester, not going to say which part. And I generally got very political at a reasonably young age because of the professions of my parents, both being in the NHS, which generally makes you political, I'd say. At least it pushes you to the left. My political journey goes from TYT Soc Dem Lib to around Oswald Mosley. Nah, but weird racist Soc Dem, which I assume is like actually most of the middle-aged population in this country. And then I went further back to the left, further from when I was on the Soc Dem left than I was before I went a bit right to the reactionary side. And in that,
Sorry, can I interrupt you because that's totally on my mind and I'm just not willing to just let that slide. I've got to investigate further. Did you say weird racist Soc Dem left?
No, I didn't say weird racist Soc Dem left. I said weird racist Soc Dem. No, I wouldn't.
So you were racist at one point? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, kind of. I was.
That's it. Can we go into why? Because we've done a couple of episodes with Zola on diaspora Britain, and we talked about racism in Britain. It's so prominent; it literally is a part of culture. You brought up to be racist. So if anybody's out there like, whoa, should be speaking to a former racist, or he used to be somewhat racist, that's just literally that's what it's like in the imperial court. Imperialism cannot function without racism, and you're taught this shit from an early age. It's so evidentiary that the fact that you're self-conscious and aware of it, that's a super interesting start. We've never had that from anybody. Solidarity for actually seeing sense. What broke it out of this racism?
I mean, all right, so you remember the MEN attacks, right?
The Manchester bombings. Yeah.
That was all over the news, right? And that's really the thing. That and a few content creators that you might be aware of started me down this kind of spiral reaction. I was watching TJ Kirk, Amazing Atheist, right?
Don't know.
I was
Okay.
Fair enough. I was watching.
Yeah, I know who he is.
I was watching some of his videos, and he's not as bad. He's now kind of a Bernie fan. But back then, he platformed some people who were more reactionary than himself. And then there were people like No Bullshit, who it turns out has direct ties to white nationalists, who I'd watched quite frequently. And it turns out when you've got media saying that Muslims are coming to bomb your nation and kill kill children, blah blah blah, and then you've got these right-wing pundits on YouTube spewing propaganda about the SJWs and all of that, it tends to stick in your head. But I mean, what got me out of it was partially my family, partially like members of my family, partially just a lived experience. But I do remember a distinct moment, which was when Phil Brooks, I don't care about doxing him, but that was no bullshit, said that there was no art that ever was worth anything that comes out of Africa. Which immediately disassociated me because it was like, what
the Great Pyramids of Giza for a start.
Yeah, but I was like, they are fucking museums. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And then I watched a documentary from Creationist Cat, which is a satirical breadtube type channel, which went over all of his right-wing connections and that he had a direct talk to a person who was arguing for a white ethno state and was cordial with him. And it's crazy, like how, you know, you can think you're not racist and you're just fighting against this social justice weird stuff. So this person is only 1 degree separated from somebody who would is basically just a Nazi.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's essentially just the power of propaganda, right? Like, propaganda is most effective when you don't even realize that you're being propagandized, right? And propaganda is a weird thing as well, because most people think that they're immune to propaganda, or when they talk about propaganda, they talk about like, oh yeah, that's that thing that happens to other people, but not me.
Ryan, join Zencaster, please. I've sent you.
I'm not doing that. I'm not clicking anything with any links or anything, because if I fuck the audio up again, I'm going to lose my shit, so I'm just not clicking anything.
Zizek had a good take on this, actually. Is that, like, you don't actually dig through propaganda by taking the glasses off. The glasses aren't the propaganda. You have to, like, learn things, like, and put glasses on to actually see through the propaganda. Because propaganda is just built into our society and is normal. Like, I do propaganda. I make propaganda. Yeah. Like everything is like opinionated media which tries to propagandize for one side or the other. It's just, you know, we try and back things up with facts where we can. Whereas some people don't give a single fuck, and we'll talk about how there's these Muslims try to destroy Christmas and the family and try to like ruin. Like, I've not met many more traditional families than Muslim households, to be honest.
Oh my god, I've had some of the most some of the greatest experience of my life of what a family unit means in a Muslim household. I don't know, there'll probably a couple of former free runners, but every now and again, well, every year there was we done this 3-run family jam. We'd all go, wow, look how bright I am. We'd all go to London, and like hundreds of free runners would go down. And there was a comrade called Nighthawk who was a part of a Muslim family. We all went to his house. What he did is he put us up. There was literally about 25 of us in this London house. He had no couches. It was a completely different experience. What he had, which I really loved to this day, was, I'm going to have to close down blinds. God damn. It was like, he had the softest and best, thickest carpet I've ever sat on in my life. Instead of like a couch, they literally sat on the carpet. But the carpet was amazing. What it was, he sat down with us. Now it was a rule. I'm going to digress a little, but this is just a little different cultural distinction that I want to mention. Was that, like, if you're a new guest to the household, then the family have to feed you like lunch and tea for like the first 2 days. Like, that's just a requirement in the religion. And because there was 25 of us, what it was the mother was there, the sister was there, and they really cooked us some of the most, they brought out sauces like yay big, like literally arm's length big, and we all come out, we ate. It was incredible. I've never been in a household and felt so welcome and so like just overwhelmed by the humanity in us. Like we were all like one, and they knew that we were hungry, we need to be fed. It was just an amazing experience that I had. And I like my great nan is like black from the Caribbean. like my granddad like had an afro and that for his on his wedding day. He was white skinned though. So like I've personally never been racist, just out of like family ties and whatnot. But yeah, there's a fucking crazy interesting background there. And to talk about what radicalised you in to getting into politics, and you mentioned the family in the NHS. Is that how that happened? Was that something like the family would be increasingly aware of like spending cutbacks, so they'd think, oh, this is Tories' fault, we should be more Labour, and then that trickles down to you saying we family are struggling more in work because of cutbacks, because of austerity. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was very anti-austerity. Even when I was in my period of reaction, I was always critical of like economic liberalism, because like I've just never been a fan of like I've seen the consequences of it. So like even if like you have weird social views, you still want to get money, even if you're like weird, even bad on certain things.
Well, I mean, you have to. It's a fact of life in capitalism. You've got to participate in the economic system, otherwise you're just gonna fucking starve. That was okay. So, Ryan, can you ask me something? I've got to close this blind before I go on to the next question.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry. I was just
no worries. Go on.
Right. Another thing that helped was I didn't do well in high school. Not that I was like bad at learning. It's just people are difficult.
Sure.
And the thing is, I was put into this like special reform school, and we started going to a Muay Thai gym. And I've done martial arts since I was very young, like a young kid. And getting into Muay Thai, after having previous experiences, half of the people there were Muslim. So like I kind of learned, oh wow, you're just normal people, and they're just fucking normal people, and I don't need to be weird about it. Like, and I do just think being around people generally makes you a bit of a better person.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that ultimately I think propaganda ultimately requires that in order to function properly. Because if you're gonna like have a system that propagandizes a population to believe certain things about certain groups of people, it's kind of a necessity that they don't know those people. Otherwise, they'll just turn at the propaganda and be like, "Well, that's clearly bullshit." So it's the same thing about like anything really, and that is like I like the like that's like the proper definition of propaganda. Like it's value neutral, if that makes sense. Like anyone who's trying to propagate an idea is like definitionally propaganda. But people have like a negative connotation with it. They think that like, oh no, only stuff like Fox News is propaganda, and the stuff I watch, that's not propaganda, right? I think the best way of thinking about it is that it's value neutral. So like anyone who's trying to propagate an idea is essentially propaganda, and it's not a bad thing.
So, boss, thank you so much for your open honesty there. And like, this is literally, I'm hoping people listen to this, hear your background, hear your history when it comes to obviously your perception of the world stemming from a racist background. But like, how did you get into politics then? What brought you to the left? And what kind of tendency have you got now, and why?
I mean, partially just like increasing austerity. That's part of it. Being in a better place, like societally, and like just being around people. But I'd say like started going through like watching more leftist like content, as well as just talking to my brother who's a communist as well. And I started watching, any of you heard of Bad Mouse Productions?
Sure.
His videos, especially on East Germany, like blew my mind. Like, because it was like, what the fuck, this, wow, this myth about like these countries that I never knew is like, wow, like, and I started watching them in Bimbo. And Finnish Bolshevik and Jason Unruh, if you know them.
Yeah.
Like, I started watching them, and then I actually started meeting them. Like, I met them, and I now talk with them pretty frequently.
We're on about I've spoke to Finnish Bolshevik quite a bit. I didn't know he was in the UK. How have you met him?
The internet.
Oh, fucking hell. I was like...
No, I didn't take a boat to Finland. I've talked with them frequently.
Yeah.
Nah, but I've been an ML for about. I've been like a socialist for about 2 years. I've been an ML for about a year, maybe. But I'm now drifting towards Maoism. I'm very interested in it.
Drifting
I've
towards
generally,
what? Sorry, Ryan
oh,
sniffed anything
Maoism.
there. Maoism.
Mainly because I've come to some conclusions which people say are just like stuff from Mao organically.
Boss.
So like,
Mao was awesome.
so like, I'm planning on reading the 5 essays and then reading some of the stuff from the Panthers.
Boss.
Sure, that makes sense. Like the addition of there are three things, right? There are three main things that Maoism added to the theory of MO, and that's the mass line, new democracy, and the cultural revolution, right? So those are three, like the three.
I want to highlight as well for everybody that's extremely important, particularly when it comes to like liberals, conservatives, however you want to identify people who stem in with this liberalist, like libertarian ideology, is the fact that, you know, I hate to bring it back to racist, you're not a racist obviously, but a lot of people have got these nationalist ideas where what it is, humanity just wants food, clothing, they want a house over their heads, they don't want to starve, they want the family to be well. But what it is, you've got your UK government telling you not everybody can have all of these things, and we need to spend billions or trillions on the military, and the reason why we can't have all of these things is because there is terrorists who's going to blow it all up and all of that shit, so we have to go overseas and we have to fight them. So that's why we can't give all the people all these trillions of fucking pounds of wealth, which obviously would end austerity, and the excuses for austerity is things like military spending. That's a big massive part of it, but obviously there's no threats. Like, who's gonna invade the UK? Like Deadly said, he's from the Middle East particularly, you know what I'm saying? It's like, is Iran gonna land on the shores of the is Iran gonna land on the shores of California, and then the UK is gonna have to back up the US? No, not at all. North Korea aren't gonna take over New York City, for example. You know, all of this is just a load of bullshit, you know what I'm saying?
Sorry, you just reminded me of the Red Dawn remake, where they decided to replace the Soviet Union and Cuba with North Korea, which would mean that the idea that the DPRK could ever take over America. And I'm a person who's a generally sympathetic and even is associated with people who are very pro DPRK. I myself have some good feelings towards it, but like, it is not nearly the powerhouse that the Soviet Union was.
No.
And the idea that it could ever genuinely be a threat, like, it has 2 nukes.
I mean, that's it. We are the threat. The imperialists, they're the threat to life on Earth, to the civilizations, to, you know, humanity, to potentially the only potentially the only source of sentient life in the entire universe. We're a threat to that. So let's move on with your extremely fascinating introduction. Like, are you a part of any organizations that you like to speak about? If so, who is that? What did you get up to?
I mean, we've talked about this in private, but I am a part of the RCG FRFI, for Racism Fight Imperialism, and I can tell you the story of how I got involved with them.
Please do, yeah.
I was going to my mate with a BLM protest, and I showed up, and I'd heard a good word from my other mate who I'd met on Discord. He was from Birmingham, and I'd just seen him there, and I was like, "Oh, this is the party they were talking about." And I talked with I'm not going to drop any names. Don't want to be too specific. I don't like to Fed post, but I talked with the Manchester organizer, and we just got talking, and then we started doing more and more activism. I tend to try and push certain things as much as I can. With it, like, they try and show up every weekend at least. They show up to BLM marches. they shown up. I got them to show up to one of the rent strikes that was happening, the 9K for Watt strikes. There was it was crazy that there was 9 police vans that showed up to that event. 9 police vans, and there was like multiple arrest attempts on an unarmed crowd. Every time somebody would pop a flare, like, and just hold it up, they'd go in to try and arrest them. Like, and like it's a flare, you know.
Literally.
It's like if I held up a lighter, like, up in the air, and or even a modified lighter, like the one that like can produce the big flames.
Huge flames, yeah.
Yeah, like there was. I had to be involved in certain activities that I'm not going to say on the podcast. However, that was an insane day.
Sounds flipping awesome. Yeah, we do need more people saying fuck the police and doing these things that you say it's just a flare, but to them it's a symbol of rebellion, of disgust at the system, and these are authoritarians, the pigs, the pig class. You know, these are people with tiny egos, and they don't want to see the people get together, or fuck the police. But can I just speak about the RCG? That's a revolutionary communist group. That's for FRFI, Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. That's a newspaper which they do on current events, and what they do is they'll write articles about socialist movements, political, like politics all around the world from a communist perspective, revolutionary communist perspective. They'll support, they do, what is it called? Rock around the blockade. So they have solidarity campaigns for Cuba, as well as and every year they'll try and go out to Cuba and take things over there for the people that they've raised from the donations of people on the streets. They do all kinds of work. We've spoken to Zionism is Racism in Nottingham. Branch put that together. Of course, Daniel Green did get arrested for saying that the actual fact of Zionism is racism. Palestine solidarity campaigns, Papua New Guinea campaigns, the RCG are absolutely there for everybody. They are the least sectarian, revolutionary, communist, socialist group in the entire United Kingdom. They're not absolutely perfect. I do think that they do need radicals like myself on the board. Because I think really, especially nowadays, we need to antagonise more. But I'm always there for the comrades whenever they do want to step it up another notch and then get a more radical approach on the board. Class consciousness is only so good if people are organised. I have no power. They have a lot of power because it's a national organisation that's supported internationally as well. Again, I'm here now, totally support the RCG. All power to them. They're the closest thing to a vanguard in this country right now. What I also want to say to everybody else in the UK who's listening to this, if you are a part of any of the revolutionary, communist or socialist organisation and the RCG attends one of your events, anything like that, show them solidarity, be a goddamn comrade to them, because it's bizarre how much sectarianism there is in organisations throughout Liverpool, throughout the UK, where the RCG are not respected or they're expelled just from meetings, and the reason is because they do support they do support Palestinians. They are anti-Zionist and they're very vocal about that. And you see all of these other so-called socialist organisations who are so sectarian about the progressiveness of the RCG. And I think it's important that, again, like I said, if you're actually there and you see the RCG being a victim of sectarianism, you have to support them and say, no, let them fucking sit down, let them have a say. The progressive, and this is a massive this is a massive problem with organisations in the UK that I've experienced. I know for a fact I've mingled with them for over 10 years, so that's really what I wanted to get out of that. I'm going to link to the RCG and Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism newspaper in the show notes. They do a digital copy of the newspaper which you can get for £1 every single month, and you can also buy the physical copy. Where's mine?
Oh,
No, I've got fucking papers around here. You know what I'm
the
saying?
thing is, the reason why I was really attracted to them was that their anti-imperialism isn't just words. Like the term imperialism, like yeah, I do like it. The term virtue signaling was originally used to refer to people who claimed them as activists, but really they just went out to a big strike and then voted Labour every 4 years. And I do feel like the old term of virtue signaling fits a lot of these so-called socialist organizations, especially when it comes to imperialism and when they will undermine their own anti-imperialism to work with the Labour Party, or at least the people on the left, and they won't try and work with them on their own terms because they know they can't.
Yeah,
Especially, I'm currently reading some Ireland stuff from them, and the response from certain organizations to Ireland was usually they would say that they support the struggle, but then they would also start trying to work with people who were on the left of the Labour Party at the time, even if they were in power.
That's, you know, a lot of people will justify that. I call it into passivity. Some people call it virtue signaling. But it's a problem that we're seeing whether you're in the United States, the DSA, Bernie Sanders, all of that shit, you know, muddying the waters, the ideological waters of progress, and people over here standing for Jeremy Corbyn, even though he's never going to be the Prime Minister, and even if he was, he's not going to implement any kind of socialism, and even if he does, we're not about we don't want socialism if it's not anti-imperialist. It's as simple as that. Just another shout out to the RCG, they do actually do solidarity with prisoners as well. So what you can do is you can pay for subscriptions for prisoners, and I'm telling you now, you can either send us the money and we'll get that out, or we'll also send that into the show notes as well, so you can support prisoners being radicalised in there. But Ryan, have you got anything to say when it comes, because I think you would put this a lot better to me. What was the comrade speaking about when he said about this virtue signalling and towards you know, standing for the Labour Party rather than actually being progressive?
Well, essentially, this is just using using the language of, you know, revolutionary politics to box out people to the left of them, right? And even though I think Chomsky's bad on a whole load of things, one thing he was correct that I heard him say when he said, you know, in every country, the quote unquote left party, which is the Democrats or the Labour Party, they essentially set the left boundary for what's acceptable within sort of mainstream political discourse, and that is the role that they play. So, you know, whenever you get a Keir Starmer that takes over a Jeremy Corbyn or whatever, even though we're both considerably to the left of both of those, we can still understand that there's a distinct difference between those two, right? And that is the role that the Labour Party plays, right? It sets you ever gone bowling and you've got the boundaries on the sides? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Labour Party is literally the left-wing boundary. They are set there to box out anyone to the left of them from acceptable discourse, right? And that is the role that they play.
That's an interesting point, and just to bring that out, what you're talking about is because obviously there's gutters either side of the bowling alley, whatever you want to fucking call it, and these boundaries come up so it can't go down the gutter, and you're pretty much guaranteed to hit one of the fucking cones or whatever they're called. So it's it doesn't take skill, it's easy work, you've just got to swing and you're probably going to hit something. But realistically, when we're talking about class struggle, you've got to do the struggle, you've got to practice, you've got to do the practice so that you can actually hit the pins and you know what I'm saying, rather than cheat. I think that was a little distinction.
And
I mean,
I would say
yeah,
that there kind of isn't a right-wing boundary.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, you're right.
You'll see Nick Griffin on Question Time, but they'll never have Arthur Scargill show up on television because he's part of the Stalin Society now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. There is a left-wing barrier, but there is no such thing that exists for the right-wing, right? And this is because they exist for capital, and capital props them up, right? And there's no such thing as a boundary that capital won't cross. I mean, so long as you're a party that exists for the benefit of, capital, and you will further their interests, they're never gonna put a boundary on you. They're never gonna say you can't do this or can't do that. Ultimately, that's why there are so many, like channels like PragerU that get multi-million-dollar investments from right-wing billionaires, because there is nothing that they won't do in order to further their agenda, right?
If anything, the right.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, if anything, the right wing made the boundary for the left, because they're the ones who can hit a strike every single time, and they know that the left they just want to play, but they don't want to win.
Electoral politics did. That's literally like the goal of the Overton window. That's what the Overton window is, right? The Overton window is like the acceptable degree of discourse in electoral politics. So like the second that you are, anti-capitalist in any respect, you won't get booked on, the BBCs of the world. They won't show you, they won't talk to you, they won't give you any, you're just persona non grata, right? You're just not even, they would just look at your position and say, well, that's just ridiculous. That's obviously, you'd just be ejected, without any conversation or anything, right? Because
okay,
like the degrees of separation between like Bernie Sanders and like, I don't know, Kevin Rashid Johnson, for instance. There's more degrees of separation between him than Ben Shapiro and Richard Spencer. That's like one. Like, there's one person separating that. Like,
sure.
I know for a fact that there's only 1 degree of separation.
The state of electoral politics, my days.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the state of global capitalism, right? I mean, you can talk about it forever, ultimately, but with the pandemic, it's only accelerated the contradictions of capital, right? Like, you can see that even on the high street now, these like giant companies are buying up everything that all of the companies that failed on the high street, right? You had like Debenhams that bought up Boohoo, and Top Man, and was bought out by the Asus group or whatever. So what's happening is, anyone who has a basic analysis or understanding of capital understands that it accumulates in fewer and fewer hands, right? That's what Lenin talks about when he talks about monopoly capitalism. But a pandemic exacerbates that, right? Like, it puts it on steroids, because now all of these companies that were on the high street have folded, right? They've gone under, but the giant capital, the giant companies with all the capital, the hedge funds, etc., can literally just swoop in and like pick over the carcasses of these companies. They're going to buy them up, and again, they'll consolidate power into fewer and fewer hands, capital and power into fewer and fewer hands, and you're going to end up with more abject monopolies. Like, we already have a ton of monopolies. Like, Nestle is basically a monopoly, Facebook's a monopoly, Amazon's a monopoly, right? There's no doubt about it, and there's tons more, especially in America. You can like look up, and even our media ecosystem is like controlled by like 4 or 5 companies. So like all of the newspapers, magazines, radio shows, TV stations, and everything are controlled by, ultimately, it's like 3 or 4 billionaires or something. So this idea of like, it's what Lenin talked about, like, the freedom in liberal democracy amounts to like the freedom of the slave owners, because under this system there is ultimately no freedom, not really, not of the count that matters, right? And then there's a startling quote about like, what freedom is enjoyed by a person that can't eat or can't have a roof over their head. And it really is just the illusion of choice, right? They will scream to the top of the roofs, freedom, 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 the entire time, while media consolidation is ever increasing. The amount of viewpoints you can listen to is diminishing. You're getting fed a narrower and narrower slice of the ever restricted political pie, I suppose. And all the while they'll tell you that that is what freedom is. You are free to do as we tell you, essentially.
Yeah, and this is why we need to make our own propaganda. Like,
sure.
I think that's why we've seen so many people come out of the woodwork. Like, Second Thought is reasonably actually pretty good, and has 1 million subscribers, like 1.2 million subs, and talks about how the CIA is a terrorist organization. Like, and that's relatively organic.
I think like things like those channels where they got millions of views, they're so it only. I mean, it's true. Everybody knows that the CIA scum. The CIA themselves are not shy to tell the public that they are scum and they kill and they topple governments that don't, you know, appease US interests. Like that's not news to me. What people with like 1 million subscribers should say, and that's what I would be saying, is the people have to go in and absolutely destroy everything that the CIA uses as part of their infrastructure. So and we have to actually topple this state through a violent revolution. There's no reform in this. There's no other way. Anything else is idealistic. We have to absolutely start revolution. It's not a day in the party. It is the forcible overthrow of one class over another. But to tie back into like leftist media and why it's important to produce, our own content, that brings us to your channel now. So tell us about your channel.
All right, so there's a story behind this, like most of the things I've said on this podcast so far. But originally, it was called Proletarian U, and it was supposed to. And if you've ever heard of PragerU, which you brought up before,
Boss.
we were trying to make a leftist version of that. However, everybody except me was busy after a few months. So after like the channel stagnated, I was like, wait, I can just use this as my own channel, right? And I just called up the only other person who would mind, and they're like, sure, go for it. So then I started making videos as ProU for a while, and then I changed my name, and I started doing interviews, and I made like, there's a crazy amount of connections that I made, like, and like, generally I do interviews, and sometimes I do like more scripted videos, but most of it I do is to platform activists. That's the main purpose of my channel. Especially
Awesome.
my interview with Steve Struggle. I don't know if I sent you that. Member of the Black Panther Party, the original one. Which was a very eye-opening discussion, in fact. Like, and he actually wants to make content himself now, which is a bit crazy.
Crazy good.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Like, that's great. But it's like, suddenly you go from like being this nobody, and now I have 500 subscribers, and I've talked to like people who are relatively big. And like my connections and degrees of separation from people have just diminished massively. Like my connections have just blown up, and it's kind of overwhelming. But
I think that's. I mean, the beautiful thing about like producing, propaganda is the fact that you learn so much as well. Obviously, you don't know what your guest's going to say. You don't know everything about their experience, so you're learning along with the listeners or the viewers. So that's one aspect to it. But another aspect is oh my god, I forgot. I forgot. I've only got a small proletarian brain.
You're an organic intellectual. Don't sell yourself short, mate.
Thank you. But no, that's another thing. Is like people don't realize, like when you're speaking to people all around the world and you're setting all of this up. Like Paul Moran said it recently. It's like, we're just YouTubers, we just do this, and that's all we are. But fucking hell, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is organising people. I mean, we've organised this to sit you down here. You've spoken to a member of the Black Panther Party, or these are the comrades. So like, that takes an organisational skill, and as was shown last night, we're seeing all over the world. I think there's probably less than 15 or 20 countries in the entire world which we have not hit. Do you know what I'm saying? And that takes a certain degree of organisational skill. And people joking about like saying, oh, we're not vanguard and all of that. We're just, again, like what's going through their mind? Like, we're not doing this for anything else other than to educate people and to organise people together. Like, if people like a more radical militant tendency that like we're pushing, then what that does is it brings them towards us, and then we organise and we work up the algorithms, and talking about proletarian you, that's literally countering their cultural hegemony. Like, you're literally the mirror opposite of that, like the ultimate dialectic to that. It's like,
yeah, I'm the antithesis.
yeah, I mean, literally though. So I think people need to take that on board, and people need to be doing this, like, to educate, to radicalize, to antagonize, and to be the antithesis to the flipping cultural hegemony that's shoved down all of our throats. And obviously the main point, the best thing that I think could happen from Revolutionary Lumpen Radio is to gain the support so that we can actually afford to rent out a space to buy a base. And then what I do is to say, okay, RCG, okay, you doing great work, this organisation, well, we've got a space there. Come to it every single day. Use it for whatever you want. Meet up, have all your meetings. I mean, yourself, the RCG, what they do is they rent out places, not so much anymore because of COVID, but what you do is you have to raise funds on the streets. And then what you do with those funds is you rent out like a space at the top of like a pub or somewhere, and then that's where you organise your meetings. That's why you need a base.
Sorry, I've only ever done online meetings, but I do agree with the base. But
I mean,
sorry, with the conversation that I've had, I have realised that for the left to actually succeed, we need a great deal more internationalism and cooperation than has been shown in the past. I feel like we need to make a lot more connections a lot sooner. Because the truth is like, we need to know what's going on. Like, if anybody on the left, like, is organising a strike, we need to know when and where. Like, everybody that is possible and available to be there. Because, like, the masses and the numbers is how we win.
Yeah.
Through.
I mean, absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. That's what's so frustrating, and why I say get me on the board of some of these big revolutionary organisations in the UK, because it blows my mind that, like, establishing a permanent base isn't on people's mind. I mean, I said it to, like, a member in Liverpool FRFI. I was like, this should be the goal, to have a base. And but what I actually got told, insane by the way, was that that shouldn't be a priority. And it's like, all your money is you're paying for an office to store all your tables, all your flipping, your banners, all your placards, and then you still gotta, like, when COVID's over, you still gotta pay like £90 a night to have a space so you can organise meetings and pay there. But, like, if you had a base building, like, I don't know what the RCG is doing with all the newspaper money, but what I'd say is, have a fucking base in London, have a base in Liverpool. Every single organisation, like, that's progressive can come in and use that space. If they want to donate to the contributions to pay for the rent, that's fine. But, like, we need this base. What it means is having, for example, you've got a hammer and sickle flag right there. Imagine a hammer and sickle flag in Manchester city centre flying off the side. Instead of a Primark fucking logo hanging off the side of a building, you've got a hammer and sickle flag. This is what we're talking about by actually, like, we're becoming the superstructure. Like, it's the material conditions that shape our ideology. We know that. Like, that's literally, like, fucking materialist, fucking, what is it, historical fucking materialism, basically, is like, it's the materials and the shapes, and it's the buildings that shape our ideology and what makes us think. So if there's shops everywhere, we're going to think, oh, well, we need to shop, and we're going to be shopping, and we're going to do all of this shit. But if there's literally hammer and sickle fucking flags flying in city centres, what that means is politicians' sons and their daughters, when they go to their city centre, they're going to see a red fucking building with all communist fucking propaganda outside it next to a fucking Mackey's, and, like, this gets in the head more than any YouTube video, because it's actually materially in the world. It's becoming a part of, like, the superstructure, and if communists acquired enough territory and enough of these bases throughout city centres, it's going to shape people's the foundations and the ideology. They're going to think, Why, like, what is that communist building over there? That's what the Black Panthers done. That's what made the IRA so successful, is people knew that there was a place, if you had any questions whatsoever, they could go to these, you know, communist bases and then ask questions. What is communism? What are you doing over here? You know, it gives people a place to go and ask questions, as well as to organise from, even sleep from. We talk about, like, people being full-time revolutionaries. They can do that, sleeping on a goddamn floor in the city centre just to wake up and then permanently be around the people. Do you know what I'm saying? But instead, I can't. It's like insane. We need to acquire territory in capitalist countries.
I was about to talk about how the Black Panthers did this and like made schools and stuff, and I was also going to mention the IRSP, the Irish Republican Socialist Party, Seamus Costello, and all that stuff. They have a building in the middle of Belfast. There's like the Connolly Youth Movement have a building. Like, all of them have buildings, and they didn't even have to pay for them. Some of them, they just squatted until like they met. Like, you may not even have to pay. You might just have to get a few people to squat there for months and like maintain it. Like, and meet the. Yeah, Connolly House was simply done by squatting in the house until like the law took effect. The squatting law took effect.
Damn, that's so interesting. And these are obviously comrades, an organisation that is supported internationally by comrades like all around the goddamn world. And the one thing that ties them all together that's similar is not just their ideology and what they're saying, it's what they've materially got and what people can go to and see physically. It's a real thing. It's not just people talking about shit. And it's like, it's so obvious to me. And when I've mentioned this to like somebody who's like dead tight with the fucking RCG, and to get told that that's not a priority, it's like, what do you even know what your priorities should be? You know, selling newspapers is good, but what's the fucking point if you haven't got a permanent base? It's like, it blows me mind. What are people doing? Like, what are the plans?
You know,
what are they waiting for? How, when people say you have to wait till there's a certain amount of class consciousness, I want people to answer this question. How do you measure class consciousness, and how do you know that there's enough class consciousness in order to propel the movement next? You know, how do you measure it, and how much is enough class consciousness? If you can't answer that, then like, well, this concept of waiting until people are class conscious is insane. In Nazi Germany, the people were very class conscious. You know, like, class consciousness is nothing without people being agitated. And like, you know, and we can't agitate and agitate people like who are online all day. If I go out and I share a post on Twitter, people on my subscribers go onto my videos, they were already communist, they were already socialist. You know what I'm saying? I'm preaching to the choir a load of the time, and that's what pisses me off about, you know, these content creators, is like, they're speaking to people who already agreed with them. So it's interesting you can bring up history. This is like why Rev Left Radio is actually so impressive, is the fact that he goes across all different tendencies and de-educate, and, you know, Red Menace as well, as de-educate people who may be libertarian, who may come from different backgrounds, and to show them a more radical historical you know, comrades and organisations that people didn't even know about, because people are so wrapped up in their own party line. And it's like, the party line is history. Like, that should be our party line, and our biggest enemy is time. And like, we like over the capitalists, because the capitalists aren't the ones who are ultimately going to put an end to the planet. It's how much time we allow them to be in power. Do you know what I'm saying?
You know, Black Red Guard made a good video about building bases. If you don't know Black Red Guard, I'd recommend anybody who's listening to check him out. He made a video about the fact that you need to build centers. You need to, like, I've made a thing about this, but we need to avoid just being in movements. We need to be there before the movement picks up, whilst the movement's picked up, and after the movement dies down. We need to be a constant presence. And having some sort of, like, just being in the community constantly and people knowing where you are. Like, I mean, not the wrong people knowing where you are, but the right people being able to figure out where you are. That's important. And I would point to the IRA, in fact, you know, Free Derry, parts of Belfast. There were parts where you would know when you're in IRA territory in You would know.
Sure.
You'd be
mean-
able to figure that out.
That's the whole point. But I mean, if they were to just talk about this thing, but they never had the socialist realism, the artwork there to get for people to see, okay, this is a real thing that's happening. I can physically touch it, and then not even to mention, like, nowadays, if there was a hammer and sickle flag flying constantly in Manchester's main street, in the city centre, in Liverpool's, people are going to be taking pictures. It's going to spread all around the world. And
It's like the Engels statue. It's like the big Engels statue that they have in Manchester. I'm so bad. It's so bad that I've been to the statue, but I was gonna go.
Welcome back.
Sorry, disconnected. I was gonna go for the 200th anniversary of Engels' birthday. Unfortunately, there was a dinner that was happening, so I didn't get to go. But like having a big statue of Engels in a gentrified part of Manchester, like even if it was done like probably in like this weird artistic liberal way, even just that statue being there is propaganda. Like
Definitely.
this guy is being honoured.
Yeah, I mean, he's like one of the greatest philosophers of all time. You know, unquestionably.
I'd say if you want to learn Marxism, reading Engels is easier than reading Marx. That's partially why my name exists. Mainly because sometimes fucking Marx rambles on in German, and it's not the easiest unless you really get into some of it.
Yeah, I mean, I to this day I still can't spell the word bourgeoisie. Like,
It's because I heard this good quote, but it's like the bourgeoisie made the term bourgeoisie so poor people couldn't pronounce it or spell it.
or or there's that other one, like, Marx failed to consider that bourgeoisie is an extremely hard word to spell. But no, so many interesting points. I'm sorry I had to rant like to you there, but like it's honestly, like, it's, to me, it's literally a step we have to take. So like when like comrades like ourselves, that's our goddamn goal in life, and like and then you see all these leftists, you see all these fucking, what is it, like, thought slime and all of that, getting like 40,000 a fucking month or something on Patreon. You see Vor's like absolutely milking everybody for cash, and he's not building a base with that.
Contra being a millionaire.
I mean, these people can buy a base. The Patreon alone pays for the monthly rent on these goddamn buildings in city centres in the United Kingdom. What
But
the
they're not
fuck is
even-
people's doing?
But they're not even Marxist, so why would they do that? They
Well,
don't even
what they
agree with
claim-
us ideologically.
That's what I think about everybody who hasn't got this base building in mind. Like, where's your practice at?
But
Well, they-
this is the thing. Anarchist praxis also involves like building bases and community like things. So even if they're anarchists or supposed anarchists, that's also part of their praxis as well.
Right, but they're not. They're sockdems.
No, them's LARPing as anarchists because I've met real anarchists, and like real anarchists actually do anarchist practice.
I mean, I don't go by what people call themselves. I go by what they actually are, right? So, like, if you want to talk about people like Thought Slime, I've never seen one of his videos. Like, the only way I know him is because of, like, people ended up, like, retweeting all of his, like, trash takes onto my Twitter timeline, and he was basically just, like, insulting any, like, the Bolivarian Revolution and Cuba and everything. And it's just like, I don't care if you call yourself a Marxist. If you're literally, like, attacking proletarian revolutions worldwide, then you're not a Marxist. I don't care what you call yourself. Like, you can go on.
Can I tell you the worst part about Thought Slime? As a
Sure.
person who's watched his content, he's not a bad content creator. His video on landlords was hilarious, and he was right about landlords. It just happens that, like, there is there's people who are a content creator first and an activist second, or an activist 10th down on the list of what they consider themselves. And there's a lot of people who being an activist is in the periphery of of what they consider themselves. But you can continue.
I mean, it's basically just because BreadTube is like, it's essentially liberal. Like, even if you call yourself Marxist, I don't care. Like, everyone should look at what they actually are, not what they call themselves. Like, I could call myself a unicorn. It doesn't make me a unicorn. Like, I don't care if people call themselves Marxist. It doesn't make them Marxist until they actually, like, understand history and deal with it in a way. Because you can't, it's like, if you, because there are definitely people out there like that like call themselves Marxist, but then end up agreeing with like the U.S. State Department on every on every international issue, and it's just like, you're not Marxist. Like, I don't care if you call yourself that, you just aren't. You can't go around calling yourself Marxist and then like you support Guaido in Venezuela, or you support the overthrow of like the Chavismos, or you support the overthrow of the Sandinistas. Like, you're not
You know,
socialists.
when Russell Brand is a better Marxist than you need to like have some introspection. Like when Russell
Brand's
Brand
boss.
is more anti-imperialist than you.
Yeah, really. Russell Brand's fucking boss. He uses so many Marxist terms to describe his own thoughts and being anti-imperialist, but he's just one of those people who's wrapped up in the whole anti-fucking Soviet Union hysteria. That's probably as big as in him.
He likes
This
Cuba
is
though,
why.
which
This is why I'm sorry, but this is why I tell people to retweet Rev Left Radio and Under the Skin. I've been saying this for like a year, comrade. No bullshit. We need to get Rev Left Radio to speak to Russell Brand. That it's so important to fucking educate him, and then I think like he would actually see the fucking light.
yeah, but is this? I feel like it's very vulgar terminology, but I use. But I do say the left has been cooked. Is being cooked by liberalism. Like
I think it always
frequently.
has. I don't see leftists
Yeah.
as comrades at all. I mean, if we had an argument about this the other day on Twitch, didn't we, Ryan? That like, I mean, communists aren't left wing. The left wing replies like, people think, if you think of wings, yeah, you fly with wings. You've got a right wing and a left wing.
We're trying to shoot the bird.
Like in it though, and that's what it is. The right wing is like in parliament on that side, and the left wing is there. Like, the communists aren't part of this fucking body. Like, you know what I'm saying? We want to build our own body. We want to build our own base.
We're the one with the Kalashnikov on the ground trying to shoot the fucking bird down.
Absolutely. So, I mean, boss, really interesting shit. Yeah, I didn't expect to be speaking about so much to you on so many different topics, but I'm glad that we did. I really hope that if people disagree with anything that we have said, they can bring it forward to us and we can expand on it further, or even, tell us why we were wrong. So before, I mean, we're moving towards the end now, before we let you go and get back to your life. But like, what have you done on your YouTube? Who have you spoken to, just to like give some shout outs to people?
Okay, if I'm to say my best video ever is the Steve Struggle interview, because I got to talk to a Black Panther, which is like which was a brilliant conversation. And
incredible.
an important thing he said was that we should all be right in theory, because the truth is if an organization goes bust and like the main theorists get arrested, we can't let the party go down. We've all got to develop organic intellectualism.
Yep.
And you can. You can make a comment.
I do think that that's what we do here and what we try to do. It might not be written down, but I'm clearly speaking about, the inhibitors to in base building today. We're talking about how people are making money off Patreon, off all these things, and they're not doing enough adequate shit with it. We're seeing, I mean, as you say, we're trying to be organic intellectuals, and the fact that we can actually document it via video, via text, that turns it into theory.
I do feel that people, I read theory and I enjoy theory. However, like for most people, to get them to read theory, there's probably been a stake before that. There's probably been a decent amount. And that is, and I do think videos can be very informative. Not as informative as reading. And I have considered like doing a text version of all of the videos that I make that are on specific topics as theory, because I write out scripts. So I could literally just, I mean, well, maybe I could get the RCG to publish it, you know, like, if that were possible. But if I'm gonna talk about like who I've interviewed, because that was the thing. So yeah, him, and then I have also interviewed obnoxious anarchist, great anarchist, cadre of mine, from Quebec, real like on the street guy, like great interview. Space Babies, who is a Maoist rapper, activist, who's from the immigrants, but also lives in the United States currently. And then there was Dead Man Animations, one of the first people to actually hit me up. After, a black Maoist YouTuber as well. Great animator, great drum player, oddly enough. Didn't know that till actually knowing him. The funny thing about that is that we did an interview and then half an hour we were talking about comics at the end of that stream. It just evolved into us talking about like me loving Alan Moore comics, like
Watchmen.
Yeah, Watchmen.
Bosh.
Just I had just read Watchmen, to be fair, before I did the interview and just finished it. So
I
and
robbed that
then
from a college library, the graphic novel one
oh,
day.
you too? Because that's
Is that what you did? I was like,
yeah.
yeah, it's a fucking graphic novel. Boss.
I got the full graphic novel from my college.
I dropped out of college soon after.
Yeah. The reason why I read it was because I had to return, because I realised it was on borrowed time that I had to return it because I hadn't returned it, because I'd had it for a year after I took it out. So I had to get it in as quickly as possible, so I blitzed through that. But then I've also interviewed Dermot Hudson of the Korean Friendship Association UK.
Bosh.
And that was interesting. That was really interesting.
Sorry, but has he done an interview with Radical Reflections, or was that a different comrade?
I don't know. But it was really interesting. And then there was my latest one with the Black Internationalists, where we talked about Maoism and intersectionalism, as well as she's a black trans woman, so like there was a lot of insight there. And also she's gonna send me a shit ton of Mao and a lot of links to a lot of Maoist dogs.
Awesome.
So if there's anything, there's stuff I could shout out. There'll be content coming up.
That was the next question. What have you got coming up in the future?
I was actually thinking of making a video about like my phase of reaction and just how propaganda actually works and how like subtle it is at times, and like just the mechanism that actually because it's not just me who's had this experience. It's a shit ton of young men, a shit ton of young white men have had an experience where they've gotten into the state where like they've been more reactionary than they even think they are. And
Sure.
and I know this is a common phenomenon. I've just seen multiple videos about it, and I kind of want to look into the mechanism of how it works.
Absolutely. Just like to say that, like, I'm reading Mark Fisher a lot, and Mark Fisher does this all the time throughout his book. He constantly refers to, TV series, soaps, movies, and then he reflects on that culture. But he brings out obviously powerful insight. So there's so much like you can just look at throughout culture and reflect on, and it really says a lot about everything. So I hope that you follow that up.
I might be interviewing Romero from Anticonquista. Very interesting. I've watched his content for a while, and there's a few people who I might potentially interview. Might talk to some Nigerian Trotskyists. That might be interesting. Like there's and that was insightful because I sat in on a Zoom call for them, and I noticed like the difference between like English Trots and people who consider themselves Trotskyists in those countries because they are directly getting affected by imperialism. So
Yeah.
confronting the question on imperialism is not an option.
Mm.
It's not this optional thing. You can't play to electoralism as much because you are in a nation that is currently getting butt-fucked, so to speak.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, boss,
So,
interesting.
Yes.
We'll definitely be following you and supporting all of your work. And we'll obviously continue to ask that of our listeners in the future. We hope that this provides a platform for you that people can, obviously you're going to be the first comrade in this UK episode. So yeah, we hope to drive some traffic towards you, and we've obviously got a lot coming up in the future. If anybody is in the UK and wants to be on this series, just reach out, let us know, and let's just hear your thoughts. And because again, all of this translates into theory because we're talking about the material conditions today, our own observations on culture and society, on the communist movement in general.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
and also, I'd be willing to interview anyone of you at some point. And just to platform yourselves as well. And now I've just got 500 subscribers. That showed up a day ago. So I guess this is essentially like my celebration stream, I suppose.
boss,
Whoop whoop.
Woo
congrats.
woo. But yeah, check out the RCG, check out my channel. Keep listening to a revolutionary Lumpen radio, and solidarity and red salute.
Thank you very much, comrade. It has been a
All power
genuine
to
pleasure.
all power to the people. All power to
All
the
power
people.
to all people. Thank you very much. So we'll love you and leave you now. We got your plugs there. So we'll make sure that they're everywhere this episode's posted. We'll upload it as a podcast tonight. I mean, very, very soon, because I don't think we stuttered or stumbled that much. So yeah, we'll just throw this up now, and yeah, we'll hopefully drive some traffic towards you. Thank you very much for your time.
Lovely.
So sorry we had to take up half an hour of it with technical difficulties at the start.
No, that was hilarious. That was hilarious.
Yeah. And sorry to any other listeners or viewers who went through that experience with us. But we hope that it was worth the wait for this episode. I certainly think that it was.
Yeah, it's been lovely being on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, and you know what? I'll probably bump into you one of these days as well. After COVID, through like something with the RCG.
I was remembering when I was trying to set up the flag. I was frustrated and I was about to go into a Jerry Adams impersonation. Like I was going, "Oh fucking, I can't fucking set up the thing. I can't hook it. What the fuck is going on?" Like.
Don't get me started on inanimate objects. I turn into a monster. Never mind another alternate ego.
And let's not get you on computer objects because they don't seem to work for you. But I'll take my leave now.
Oh no, I just start dripping with sweat off all the pressure of people like Steve telling me he's going to come round and give me a slap. But yeah,
See you in
boss,
a bit though.
yeah, peace, love,
Peace.
solidarity, workers and Lumpen of the world, unite.
Unite.
What a cool guy.
Uh-huh.
Just throw this up to YouTube right now, isn't it?